So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews here for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to be joined by acting royalty, the legend that is Georgie Glen. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me, Matthew. It's delightful to be here talking to you.
And I mean, how are you? How are things with you at the moment?
Well, all right. I mean, I've been very lucky over the past couple of years, and we've escaped a lot of the awfulness that people are going through and have gone through. And I'm ensconced in my home in Suffolk by the sea, so I've got the sea to look at. A lot of brave and hardy people are swimming in it every day, and I'm not one of those. But it's been lovely. I've been in a very nice location, and work-wise, after an initial hiatus, we've managed to sort of keep going with work. So that's very, very fortunate. And sorry.
No, I was going to say, obviously, in the first lockdown, you know, the really tough and harsh lockdown. How did you find that? I mean, were you kind of doing anything different, learning new skills during that period?
I wish I'd been learning a new skill. It's when we all look back and think, why didn't I learn Italian? No, I think what we did, I did a lot of stuff on Zoom, believe it or not. So lots of things kept happening that were distant. I'd just got over filming The Crown, which we'd finished series 4, just as clouds were gathering on the horizons for all that. And so things like the ADR and post syncing and things like that still had to go ahead, but they were done from home. So that it was quite absorbing, really. A lot of sort of technical boxes of mics and things like that arrived, and one had to do it all long distance. And so what with that and a lot of online plays and various theatres, a theatre in Pitlochry was doing something called a sound stage, which I was lucky enough to take part in. And then Call the Midwife, although we were about to start as filming series 11 as lockdown came into force, and they delayed really by 2 months, 3 months, I think, before we were able to go ahead again. They had to just make it COVID safe and change a lot of things, you know, the safety measures and things like that. So in a way, life continued in a so-called normal way after a couple of months.
For you, I mean, obviously having to kind of get used to the sort of new way of working, is that something that you've enjoyed, that you've quite liked, or do you miss people?
No, I hate it. It's in a way that from a point of view of an actor applying for work, like your agent will contact you and say, you know, you need to go to an audition for a job. So that largely stopped, and it's now become much more the norm that we do what's called self-tapes. And I do prefer a self-tape, I have to say, because you've just got a bit more control over what you submit. So you're sent a scene and you learn it and you record it yourself, and you can keep recording it till you're happy with what you're going to submit. So from that point of view, I like it. From a filming point of view, the challenges are just huge, really. And I mean, from an actor's point of view, they just get in the way, basically. You can't, I mean, for example, for Call the Midwife, we have a 2-meter rule at all times on set, so that all sorts of sort of techniques have to be used, and special lenses to make us look like we're slightly closer than we are. And I mean, what they achieve is fantastic, because you sort of, hopefully, it looks normal when you watch it. But from an acting point of view, it's very, very hard. And I think particularly for the nurses who just, I've countlessly witnessed them saying, but I would have held her hand, I would have hugged her at this point. I wouldn't have been 2 meters apart telling her this news. So they're different creative obstacles that have to be overcome for the performer, quite apart from all the other obstacles for everybody else, you know. And I think it's not as satisfying as a performer, because you're constantly stopped from doing what might be more natural for you.
I mean, obviously going back to the lockdown and you know the kind of the early days, did you find that you were connecting more with people in your downtime? You know, catching up with people that you maybe would have maybe lost contact with a bit.
Yes, because one had time. And also, I think within my neighbourhood here, I certainly made a lot more contact because there was very much. I live in a very small town, but because we were just all here more often, and you got to know the people who actually live here rather than the visitors, we did very definitely have a strong sense of community and looking out for each other. And we had little sort of code words for, if I put this in the window, I need something, so please come and I'll do some mime through the window as to what it might be. And it was really actually very nice. And I hope that remains now that we've got that community feel. And it just was a very nice thing to feel one was part of a community. I mean, do you find that where you live?
See, the thing that kind of, for me, because where I live, we live on a street and we sort of know people around anyway. I mean, exactly. So you kind of got both neighbours either side. We sort of know them and everything. So we sort of knew each other. But the thing that I really found quite incredible was obviously the Thursday evening and seeing people come out. I mean, it's something that I wasn't really sure whether people in my neighbourhood would do it, just because, people have their own busy lives. But during the height of the pandemic, when everyone was going out on Thursday night, it was amazing to hear the kind of the rattling of the pans and the clapping.
And nice just to make eye contact with people and just that feeling of we're all in this.
Exactly. And I mean, the other thing I was going to ask, of course, is the amazing NHS. What's your impression of them been over the last couple of years? I mean, they've always been amazing, but what have your thoughts been?
Incredible. I mean, just incredible. I'm so in awe of their tireless commitment to what they were doing. And I just... I feel for them because I think, we stopped this clapping, and I can understand in the end, you think, look, we don't need the clapping anymore. We need decent pay for decent work. And I think that's the point. And I was sort of just incredulous that after all this, I'm not speaking from a knowledgeable position, but I understand their wages have not gone up considerably or at all, have they? I mean, I don't know. I can't remember what the political announcement was, but you thought that after all they've gone through, this is the time that money must be put in, because it just shows in a time of crisis, we need them more than ever, and that must be recognised.
I was going to say, we're obviously so lucky because I don't think any other country in the world has a national health service like we do.
No, I think we are so lucky. And I think it's one of those things that until it's struggling or isn't there, a lot of people aren't going to realise, I'm not going to get on to Brexit, am I? No, I'm not. But it's one of those things that people don't realise, I see, that's all changed now, and it's all those things that we've taken for granted is a major gear change. And I think the NHS is one of those things that we just rely on it. We just rely on the fact it's there, and it needs looking after, and it needs not just our appreciation, it needs hard cash, I think, to go into it. And it does need to please be there for as long as we can see into the future, I think. And I hope a lot of people, particularly during these last 2 years, have realised that more than ever. But we've got to get the word across to the powers that be.
Now, we must talk about, of course, Call the Midwife. Such an amazing show. I mean, do you remember how you came to first get into the show, and were you a fan before joining?
I was incredibly lucky. I was a fan, but not a loyal fan, I would say. I'd seen it and thought it was very good. It sounds ridiculous. I don't watch a great deal of television. But having said that, I obviously knew it and had seen it and knew of it and its reputation. And I think I was, again, incredibly lucky because I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think I auditioned for it. I think I was very lucky to be offered, and it's very unusual for me. Normally I have to audition. I was offered a role for the Christmas special, and it was just for one episode. And it was the character of Miss Higgins, but just turning up for this Christmas special. And looking back now, I think that must have been my sort of practical audition, really, because then gradually I would be asked back to do another episode and another episode. And it's still like that for me. I can't ever assume I'm a regular, because I'm not. But fortunately, I've been in every episode since that Christmas special. So I like to think I'm there in the background, which is quite right for the character. But I'd be very sad if they ever had an episode that they found they didn't need my character. I would be desperate.
That's the thing with the show, is people love it so much. It really does warm people's hearts. And I think that the reason why people love it is because it just feels like a really warm, friendly hug that people need, especially at this time. I mean, for you, what is it like being on set? Because it just looks like everyone gets on so well.
Yeah, well, we are a family. There's absolutely no doubt. I'm not in as much as everybody else. So there's a core, but it's lovely when we are all in it together, like for a special or something like that, that we suddenly cross over with each other. And that's just delightful. Again, the last 2 years have been harder because we've been kept more apart. We used to always have lunch together, and in the warm weather, we put table outside and all sit and have lunch, which was lovely. And all that's obviously stopped. So it's been slightly more isolating in the last 2 years. You get your little caravan and you sit in it, and a box of lunch is brought to you, and you don't mingle really as much as you might otherwise. And that's sad. But, it is a very comfortable and lovely family amongst us all, amongst the crew and the producers and everything. And Annie Tricklebank, the producer, is always there, and often will come onto set and incredibly supportive to everybody. So it's got a good heart, both on screen and off, I would say, as a show. And I'm terribly fortunate, and I continually feel grateful for being part of it, actually. I feel I'm almost there by default, but I'm terribly grateful for it and love it. And I couldn't wish for a nicer job, really.
The great thing with the programme is that obviously it's perfect for the whole family, which I think, especially in these times when people are watching different programmes, it's great to have a show where the family,
a Sunday evening show,
exactly, where everyone can come together. And I mean, I imagine
it's quite grueling, I would think. It doesn't hold back, does it, from some of the hardships and some of the sort of less pleasant visions that you might have. So I suppose children might, but it would give rise to conversation, and it's real. And Heidi Thomas is fantastic. She does her due diligence, and every year she is highly conscious of what was happening that year and what came into being that year, and and weaves that into the stories. It's wonderful. I think her writing is extraordinary.
I mean, for you, oh, sorry, no, continue.
No, Matthew, go on.
I was just going to say, for you, has there been a storyline that's just been a favourite, one that you've loved being a part of and watching on screen?
What I love from a personal point of view, do you mean? I think what I love is my slowly burgeoning friendship with Nurse Crane, because I think to have two women of a certain age in a show is quite an achievement, and we have more than two, in fact. But for Nurse Crane and Miss Higgins to be allowed to, they've come from very different lives. They're very different in many ways, but they have a companionship that draws them together. And I think that's really special, that it's a program that has allowed that to evolve. And I think that's what I love. And they're making it quite slow. And Linda and I sometimes kind of go, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we did such and such? Like, she's just gone off on holiday, I think, if you saw the most recent episode. And at one point we thought, God, that would be fun if Nurse Crane and Miss Higgins both went off on a tour of Europe together, but that hasn't sadly happened. And I didn't go off with her, but there's potential there. And I think it's very nice, because I think certainly my mum had very few but very close women friends of her own age, and it was a very special relationship she had with them. It's not, they belong to I'm wittering now, but they belong to an era where you're not terribly open, you know, and they're both quite buttoned up women and quite proud. And I'm probably talking more about Miss Higgins. I shouldn't talk about Nurse Crane. Linda can talk for herself. But I think it's nice that they've found a companion where they can show themselves a bit more or be a bit less brave, you know, and they can allow themselves to show vulnerability. And I love that. I really love that. And I value it because you don't see that much on television.
I mean,
it's amazing for a prime time series that they can do that.
I was going to say, I mean, if, you know, obviously, you know, we hope the show will continue on and on because it is amazing. Would you stay with the show until the end if you could?
Yes. If they would have me, yes, of course I would. Definitely. Yeah, I love it. They won't get rid of me without a fight.
Now, the other show I just wanted to briefly mention is, of course, Waterloo Road, which a lot of people loved you in, obviously. For you, what
stayed with that too?
Yeah, I mean,
what stopped it?
I mean, that's the thing, is it obviously is making a comeback. Would you love to go back to that if you could?
I wouldn't be asked back. I'm long past retirement age now for Waterloo Road, and also I went into it when it moved to Scotland. Where a lot of people felt it sort of pulled up its roots a bit. I mean, it's going back to its roots now, isn't it? And I think, I don't know how popular it was in Scotland. I think maybe that's why it ended as early as it did, because it was originally going to be definitely 3 years, I think, or 5 years, and then it wasn't as much as that. But I went in as a Scot. So the reason I think I was invited into that was, or auditioned for it, was because I had a Scottish accent that could be understandable to the English. I think that was the kind of reason. So I got in on that ticket, and I so that my relevance to it would have gone now.
I mean, I say, when I sort of said to people that I was interviewing you, so many people were like, "Oh, we loved that character," and it was a shame that
I loved that character.
So, I mean, what are your memories of playing that character and being on that show?
I absolutely loved it. I mean, I'm going to sound fake now because I've just said the same about Midwife, but it's comparable for me because I loved Audrey. And what I remember the very first day I went up there, and I remember the producer saying to me, I'm so sorry. Spike. Oh, sorry. He said to me, you have dominion over your character because there are a lot of characters, and while the writers and editor are across them all, you know your character better than anyone else. So if you feel something is out of character, say so. And that kind of gave me, Spike, go. That kind of gave me freedom to take Audrey. And in a way, I've applied it to Miss Higgins. It's taken me in a direction because originally she was much more stern, strict, conventional, you know, that type. You could tell you'd sort of ticked a box for the type of person they wanted. And I would kind of say the same for Miss Higgins. But you're able within that to then give softer corners or show different areas and aspects. And we're back to the vulnerability again. And I think Audrey had that opportunity. And you can say a line so many different ways that, you know, despite what the writers may have had in mind, this is a terrible admission, as an actor, you're able to kind of put your own emphasis on it or your own inner thought to it. So I think, I like to think I was able to make Audrey a more rounded character than she might otherwise have been. I'm just going to look to the right. No, it's okay. The cat was climbing up the curtains, and I was worried the window was open, but it was.
Now, I mean, obviously, with both Audrey and Miss Higgins, if you were to have met either of them, do you think you would have got on? Do you think you would have been friends in real life?
No, I don't. In a quick answer, I think I personally, Georgie Glen, would have been a bit wary of both of them because they're both. No, I think they would have both been quite strict women, and I wouldn't have ever been in a position, I don't think, to have got close to them or on a more informal friendship base. I don't know. Would you? Do you think you would have?
I think in terms of Audrey, I could imagine her being. I mean, I love talking to all people, so I think I would have probably liked to think I
If
would
you'd
have
been
made.
in her class,
Yeah,
do you
exactly.
think
I'd
you'd
like
have
to
got
think,
round?
but yeah. So I think I would have, because I was quite a chatty kid at school. I like to think that I was quite good at, just being myself and kind of talking to people. And I think I'd like to think I would have maybe kind of sweetened her up a bit, maybe. But you never know.
I think you might have done, yes. As long as you didn't overstep. She'd have been quite strict if you'd been chatting during her history lessons, I think. But no, she had a good heart. I mean, she recognised goodness when she saw it. And I think Miss Higgins is the same, but I think they would both withhold themselves. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's an interesting question, isn't it? But I like them both. I love them both. As I think you tend to when you're playing a character. You do, even when you're playing a not very nice character, you get into the humanity of them and you have a soft spot for them, I think, when you're playing something like that.
Now, I mean, going forward, is there a role that you haven't had the chance to play that you would love to do? Is there like a dream job for you going forward?
No, I'm living my dream job. I think Call the Midwife is one of my dream jobs. Waterloo Road was one of my dream jobs. I'm sometimes asked about theatre. I haven't done theatre now for some years. When I started out in the business, I was lucky enough, old enough, to be in 3 weekly rep, which I did at the Wolseley Theatre in Ipswich for 8 months, which was the first job I ever had out of drama school. And that was such a wonderful apprenticeship. And to me then, theatre was everything. And I only really did theatre for those early years of my profession until I had children. And once I'd had children, I found I had a slight battle with theatre because I could never quite remove myself from these 2 daughters that I'd left at home, possibly one with a temperature, and then go off to the National and perform on the stage worrying. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't quite compartmentalise my life in the same way. So I began to do less and less theatre. And you haven't asked about theatre, but I'm coming back to what
No,
you said.
that's all right.
But in the end, I sort of think I got stage fright because I was doing it so rarely. I sort of did a job, I remember, in Salisbury, and then I did a job a few years later in Chichester, or it might be the other way around. And for both of those jobs, they were like, every performance was like a first night. So although I was still able to perform, the nerves never abated. And I thought, I just can't do this anymore. So I've stopped doing stage work, which is a great loss because I loved it. There's nothing like it and it's not comparable. But I think if you asked me about stage work, there would certainly be parts that I would think, oh yeah, I'd love to do that, or I'd love to play that role. But with television, less so, because I think I'm just very happy in the job I'm doing.
I mean, that's the great thing, I guess, is that you got that choice of you can do, TV, theatre. They're both very different, but I imagine they can both give you something different in your kind of like
completely different. And film again, it's all again different. And corporates, I mean, a lot of actors do corporates, for companies and in-house films, and that again is different. A lot of actors just do voice work. I mean, I often liken it to a musician, say, who is brilliant at a clarinet. They can play in an orchestra, they can play in a jazz band, they can play in a military band. There's so many different ways you can apply your trade. And for an actor, it's exactly the same. And sometimes life takes you in a particular direction, but you can stop and rewind. And I'm hoping one day I do go back to stage, but at the moment, the thought of it terrifies me. You never know.
Now, I just want to say it's been a pleasure talking to you. But before we go, is there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who's currently in hospital at the moment? Anything you'd like to say?
I would just like to say, keep your strength up. Keep looking forward to better times. Allow yourself to be cared for and be looked after, and don't fight that. And know that you're not forgotten. It's whenever I visit someone in hospital, it's always that feeling you can walk away out of the door back into the light. And most of us have experienced when you can't walk out of that door and you're still in the hospital, and your visitor goes, and you might look at them out of the window and you feel left behind, but you're not, and you're in everybody's thoughts. And thanks to Matthew, we're able to reach you. So take care, look after yourself, and become stronger.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're welcome back anytime. It's been great.
I'm sorry I've wittered on, Matthew.
No, we love it. We love it.
Anyway, my love to you.
Perfect. So I'll stop that there.